us a moment here. Goodness gracious me. So Finn, just while we get started, look, how did we come across each other? Why don't you, do you want to lead this one off, mate?
Yeah, I'm going to start for a little bit, man. So yeah, we both basically made videos covering the same topic. And after scrolling through YouTube and the like, finding out there's not many other people doing the same thing. So thought a little collab would be in order. Try and get both of our views across here.
Well, and hi Lisa, how's it going?
Hey,
thank
Lisa.
you for tuning in. Look, if you're watching this, please make sure that you do share, because look, this is something that nobody's talking about right now. This is the damn scariest thing about what we're going to be discussing, because this is just slipping under everybody's noses right now. Like, all right, so
yeah, sorry, I didn't talk over you there. It's surprising. Finn, it's surprising how few people are talking about it. I was saying before, like, I don't know if I'm searching for the wrong things or if I'm not fucking, learning how to use Google properly, but there's just not that many people that seem to be openly chatting about this, especially with Google sharing it to everyone who logs on to Google or YouTube, gets a little friggin' reminder of it. And no one seems to be talking about it. You'd think that would, prop up heaps of people to initiate it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you before.
No. I find I talk too much at times. So like, and what I'll do is, rather than apologize, if you hear me just stop talking through a word when we cut into each other, that's just me shutting up to let you go.
Right. Likewise.
All right. So Finn only just recently started making videos. You've been making some videos on SpaceX. But you came across this topic. You made one video. Video. Yes. All right. Guys, so Finn's just started a YouTube channel. So once you're done watching this show, make sure you head over and check out his YouTube channel, because he's getting started on something big. Because now I don't know how you classify that yourself yet, but the fact that you're willing to cover a topic like this, that tells me you're about to start something big, because everybody's so distracted right now. COVID is running rampant. Our politicians are running rampant. I suspect other states in Australia is going to go into lockdowns. Dan Andrews, who knows what that guy's doing anymore. He's like, in my opinion, he's been a bit power hungry. So everyone's really distracted in Australia. And what nobody was talking about was this Google open letter. So you might have logged into Google in the last week and YouTube, and you've seen Google saying, hey, your the way you consume news, the way you consume media is at risk online. And it's basically saying that the ACCC in Australia is passing this mandatory news bargaining code that is going to be stripping away independent journalism and small businesses, and it's going to, or small business media outlets, and it's going to essentially give the mainstream media a massive advantage as to what they can do. Now, I covered this in a live stream last week, and as I was going through the legislation and the EM, as we started trolling through what this news bargaining code was, it became concerning, because, this is essentially a sum of what it is. So we already know Google has massive control as to the information they put in front of us. And they very happily admit that, yeah, we manipulate your search results and we put things here and there. And even in Google's open letter, which you can go read, it's on the internet. I'll drop a link in the comments once this show is done. I'm sure you'll have links in your YouTube description as well.
Yeah, of course.
And essentially, excuse me. Sorry, I don't have COVID. I'm just going to confirm that right now. Nobody shipped me off to a quarantine facility. But look, essentially what Google was saying was, they were saying, yeah, we already give the mainstream media a massive advantage. And yes, we already give them massive handouts. But now Australia wants to pass this legislation that would allow them to have this massive, monstrous monopoly over the internet. And, it's funny, because the first thing that I read after that was the ACCC's response. The ACCC's response basically said, Google's just being a bully. They're speaking fluffery. Really what's happening is we're trying to create a fair media bargaining code that will allow for these independent journalists and what have you to be able to negotiate with Google so they can be fairly remunerated for their work. And then you start reading the mainstream news media articles that are saying, like, Google's a bully, they're telling lies, they're trying to scare you, blah, blah, blah. This is a great thing for Australia. Because if we have a bargaining, because, these tech giants, and this is a fair point, this is a very valid point, these tech giants, because what's going to be covered under this code is Google, Facebook, Facebook Stories, Facebook Newsfeed, Facebook News. And the legislative instrument also leaves it open so they can include other things. And some of the other platforms they're talking about getting involved with include things such as Instagram. So this has an effect on, probably going to have an effect on all social media platforms that you use within Australia, right? And so there is a fair point. The tech giants, Google and Facebook, they have a massive monopoly over data. They have a massive monopoly over what we can actually view on the internet. And yes, they already do shadow ban people that have wrong think and wrong opinions. And yes, they already do favor the mainstream media. So, but the thing is, they're saying we need a bargaining code so that the media outlets can be fairly remunerated for their work. And, you know, it sounds like a good thing. But when I was on the surface, and when I went through my live stream with Unguard last week, what we began to uncover as we went through the explanatory memorandum and the legislation was that this basically created a strict criteria that the ACMA, which is the Australian Communications Media Authority, police. And basically what happens is in the legislation, automatically the ABC and the SBS, they're a party to the code. They're protected by this. They're not able to negotiate remuneration because, you know, they're non-for-profit, which just means that they're government funded and they're very left-leaning. And so they're a party to the code, and that there's a criteria that needs to be met that the ACMA polices to allow other news media outlets to become a party to the code. So I think just to give a broad background, and then I want to get Finn's sort of input just on his broad thoughts on this, is let's just talk about what this criteria is right now. So the first thing that we have is the revenue test. So these media I'm going to share my screen here in a moment. I'm just getting to the right spot on the screen. Forgive me for my unpreparedness. You guys have no idea how busy things get, and there's just so much happening. So let's go here. I'm going to start the share screen here. We're on the EM. Let me know if you think that is big enough. Should I zoom in some more? Or is that enough?
No, that's perfect, man. Perfect amount.
All right. So we begin with the revenue test. A news business corporation satisfies a revenue test if it has an annual revenue of $150,000 or more, or if in 3 of the last 5 years it exceeds 150,000, right? So you've got the revenue test. Then you've got the content test. So a news business corporation satisfies the content test if the news source it nominates when applying to it is predominantly core news content. And that does have a definition, which, you know, broadly issues of public significance to Australians, issues relating to engaging in Australians in public debate and informing democratic decision-making. We'll get to democratic decision-making soon. Content which relates to community and local events, right? So, you know, we've got this broad idea of what core news content is. The Australian audience test, so, you know, it has to satisfy that it's an Australian audience when it nominates to apply to it, and it's predominantly for Australian purposes, serving Australian audiences, and that if it's a foreign business, it may satisfy the test if it operates predominantly in Australia for the purposes and serving Australian people. However, a global news business that only occasionally produces Australian news will not satisfy the test. Okay, so these aren't bad things, but I'm just trying to get your mind around, you know, what you need to be a part of the code. And then the professional standards test. So a news business corporation satisfies a professional standards test if, you know, so we'll just go through these broadly. So it's subject to the rules of the Australian Press Council or the Independent Media Council. It's subject to Commercial Television Industry Code of Practice, Commercial Radio Code of Practice, Subscription Broadcast Television, and internal editorial standards relating to provisions of quality journalism, right? So you have these 4 criteria: revenue, Australian audience, professional, content. There's your 4 criteria. You need to satisfy them to be a party of the code. So then you have the ACMA, which is the policing authority, and they get to decide if you make a submission and they decide, do you meet these 4 criteria? And if you meet these 4 criteria, then we can make you a party to the code. But guess what? We can also revoke you at any time. Now, what is the significance of being a party to the code? The significance of becoming a party to the code is that, 1, you're able to negotiate with Google what your remuneration is, but it also means that you're now able to negotiate with Google to get yourself favorable search results. It also means that you can have access to your algorithmic data, and so that you can But the other thing that this code allows for, which is where it started getting concerning, is access to all of your data. And then Google has to be able to provide the news corporations that are a party to this code with where they can access this data as well. Now, that becomes very concerning because they're going to get an understanding of everything that we're searching on Google. They're going to have an understanding of what you search, when you search. And, think about this. So the mainstream media is going to be able to manipulate your Google searches. It's going to be able to target headlines based upon what people are searching, but it's also going to be able to target you based upon your preferences, because these news media outlets, guess what? Just like any other business, they earn ad revenue. They're going to be targeting things at you on purpose for your ad revenue. But where it gets scary for the purpose of a democracy is with this code, you're putting a lot of faith and trust that this ACMA is going to broadly, do the right thing in terms of policing, because the ACMA has so much power. The ACMA can kick anybody out of this code. And if you get kicked out of the code, you're not going to show up on Google anymore. You're going to be buried. On Facebook, you're going to be buried. So if you're an independent journalist, if you are a media outlet that can't become a party to this code, if you could be a party to this code, but the ACMA thinks that what you're spouting isn't the right opinion, you're not going to be able to become a part. They can kick you out of this code and you're not going to be afforded these protections. And that has a lot of implications on a democratic society because, well, what happens if all that's there is the mainstream media? What happens if all that you're seeing and being fed is the mainstream media? And this is where I want to carry over to you, Finn, because you drew my attention to something quite interesting as well.
Yeah. So as well, I stopped calling it the main media as well, because it's not really that. It's the legacy media. It's the people who control the narrative. That's what they are. They're continuing to try to control the narrative. They've been doing it since they started controlling the airwaves back in the day, and now they're losing that power because the internet's come along and just basically taken all that power away from them and given it to everyone. So they don't have that anymore. I think this is an attempt to try and get that back. But yeah, we were looking at this code before. I don't know if I can share my screen on this. I'm not too sure.
I think I've given you capability to share your screen. So yeah, let's have a look.
Yeah. New to Zoom, everyone, so don't hate me for this.
Yeah, now Finn's the first timer on this Zoom technology, as he did say. So, all right, there you go.
Is that working?
Do you want to just zoom in just a little bit? So, and give some context as to what this is, because I'll throw the context first. So we have until the 28th of August to write a submission about this code. Because currently the federal parliament is taking submissions and recommendations as to what people think should, what suggested changes should we make to this code? Because right now, heavily favors mainstream media. There's a strict criteria that you have to meet. A lot of news media outlets are not going to meet this criteria, which means that the mainstream media news outlets are going to have a very big monopoly, and they're going to be able to knock out their competitors from the search algorithms. Yeah,
exactly right. It's exactly what they're going to do. So just on here at the moment, so I'll read out this part. So if this policy, so this is coming from the mandatory collective submission of the 88 regional, state and national news publishers. So this is the local representatives. Right at the bottom here, I'll zoom down for you so you can all pause and just go through, but these are the conglomerates here. So if you want to go through, if you know any of these companies, this is coming from them. So on page 1, very fucking important, they put it right here, right on the front fucking page, so you can read it straight away. How your fans go with reading stuff out? Because my fans do not like me reading.
No, the reading is good because it shows that you're not just speaking fluffery. It shows that you're actually, you're drawing your information from somewhere. So, I mean, as long as you don't do what I've been doing, like on my live streams, I've probably been reading too much and nobody's really criticized me about it, except for maybe mum. She's like, Zach, can you read a little less? I'm like, mum, I am new to this live stream stuff. And the other thing is I get so busy on my work days. Like I didn't finish work till just before we jumped on this call at 8 o'clock. So sometimes I come in underprepared. So I am kind of reading as I go along sometimes. So this one in particular, I was reading as I went along.
Yeah.
But look,
this is nuts. So this is coming from these local journalists, and they're they've obviously read this, they've obviously put a lot of work into it, and they are genuinely concerned about this. So basically, I'll read out what it says here. If this policy results in large ongoing financial support to a tiny handful of the biggest, most powerful media companies and does not support independently owned public interest journalism represented by our group on a scale that ensures its visibility, it could permanently and irrevocably increase the concentration of ownership of Australian news ecosystems into the hands of 2 or 3 companies, limiting competition and employment. So right here, they are very concerned that they are going to cease to exist if this code comes in. And when you think about it too, from what you've read, what's the guy's name you were talking to last time?
Ungard.
Ungard, great name. What he was saying there is that as soon as they take over, they're going to be in the top results. So regardless of what you're searching for, all of the legacy media is going to show up at the beginning. And no one goes to page 2 of Google. No one keeps searching. Everyone goes with those initial links, which means no one's going to be clicking on this stuff anymore. No one's going to be getting access to it. All they're going to have is the people that already subscribe to them, and they're going to have no more new people, which means their company is going to collapse. All of them, all of these independent journalists. And these are our local journalists. These are the people from down the street who are reporting on the local shit that's happening, and they're just not going to get any screen time. They're not going to get anything. And yeah, sorry, go on.
Do you want to just scroll up? Just the paragraph below the one you just read out. I think this is an important one to read out as well. And look, if you want to just highlight it, no, the one just above that. So this, and if you want, I'll read this one out.
Yeah,
diverse ownership of news publishing is crucial to our democracy. It gives hundreds of regions and communities access to local journalism, provides diversity of news coverage and views in the cities, and it ensures that the country's journalism isn't left almost entirely in the hands of the 2 or 3 large companies from whom journalism is just one part. Now, first thing off the bat, who is sick of mainstream media? Who is sick of the lies and the fear being perpetrated by the mainstream media on a daily basis? All right? Are you fed up with that? Because what they're saying here is, if this code gets passed, say goodbye to us, say hello to big daddy mainstream media, have fun being controlled by fear every second of your life when every single thing you type into Google turns up a search result for, I don't know, 7 News, 9 News, ABC, SBS. They've already got favoritism in this code. They're already a party to this code. And this first sentence, diverse ownership of news publishing is crucial to our democracy. We know how important media coverage is to democracy, because that's where people try to get their facts. That's where people get their information. This is where people try to figure out what is going on. And if you're only ever getting fed one side of the story, and it's so difficult to find anything else outside of that, what's that going to do to your democracy?
Great questions. Great questions. Couldn't agree more, man. It's we'll keep going down here. I've got another one. It's basically just showing you from the side of these guys what their actual fears are. And these are our local journalists. So it's pretty wise to take these guys' opinion, because it's fair to say they know what the fuck they're talking about. In some cases, the collapse of these suppliers would lead not only to a reduction in competition, but to the absence of any professionally produced local journalism. So they think it is just going to be completely cut away. It is just going to be annihilated. All we are going to have left is these legacy medias just spamming their content. And what I was reading as well, I think this was in the EM document that you were talking about before. I don't have it here, but on there, what it was saying is that if it keeps getting spammed, what will happen is, if they have the access to the analytical data, they can profile each one of us, know what each one of us is thinking for the day, doing for the day, what we're searching for, know everything about us, and then tailor the news specific to us, which again, I think we've had this talk before. That's not what the fucking news is. The news is not tailored to someone. The news is meant to be an unbiased representation of what is happening. And if you want to find the news, you go and search for that article, and then you find it and you read about it and you learn about that subject. You do not have that subject tailored to you in the way that's going to make it easy for you to read and immediately join the side of whatever it is that article's pushing. That is spam. By definition, that is spam. So what's going to happen is if they get access to this analytical data, you can guarantee they're going to profile spam constantly to the top of Google. So no matter what you search for, regardless of what you search for, it is going to be clickbait ad after clickbait ad after clickbait ad. And Google and YouTube and Facebook are going to be destroyed because no one is going to go to them anymore because their shit, it's now useless. It's dead.
What option do you have? Like, who uses Yahoo?
What are you going to do?
Search
Bing?
on Yahoo? Bing? Yeah, have fun on Bing.
Bing? Yeah.
You got to search on Bing on Internet Explorer? Is that what you're going to do? Is that how you're going to get your independent journalism? You probably won't find them on there either. Their search engine's garbage. And people say, well, don't all these places already have all of our data, blah, blah, blah. Or what does it matter if they have our data? What does it matter if they have... Okay, so think about this. When you sit in front of your phone and you talk about something, and 2 minutes, like not even 2 minutes, within seconds, you get a targeted ad, right? That's because Google and Facebook are listening all the time. And they're like, oh, thank you for all of this data. And they're just like, yeah, now we're going to target you with ads so that we can make some damn money off of this. And it's like, oh, wow, nice one, guys. Now, imagine giving that level of power, that level of data, that level of information to the mainstream news, the people that want to control you with fear. Have you seen some of the mainstream news articles going around these days? And, they're trying to make these things sound like a good thing. So let me give you an example, right? I'm here in Victoria, right? We're the locked down state. We have like nothing left at the moment. We're just locked in our homes with an hour curfew. And we have what's called martial law. We have police with unlimited powers. A police officer could walk into my home right now without a warrant, flip the place upside down, or take me away because he suspects that I'm a COVID case and give me a direction to go get a COVID test, right? What have you, right? That's the type of police power we're talking about. And now, one of the most recent mainstream news articles that I saw was Victorian police are now launching their aerial assault so that we can spy on you with drones to make sure that you're wearing your masks and not more than 5 kilometers away from your home. So, we're talking about drones with facial recognition software, blah, 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 all this type of concerning stuff. But the mainstream news is framing this perspective that that's a good thing because that's fighting a virus. Tell me how spying on your citizens with drones is not about a surveillance state and about a virus. But the perspective that the mainstream news flips on it is, this is such a great thing. And, they question a few people on the streets. Who knows where they find these people, by the way. It's like, I don't mind being spied on by drones. I follow the rules. I do the right thing. So I don't know who in their right mind is comfortable with police flying drones around them. But if all you're getting is mainstream media telling you, yes, this is such a very good thing. If that's the only perspective you're getting, your mind is warped. And not because your mind is warped because you're dumb, but it's because it's the only information that's being fed through your skull. I can't see what world that would be the case. So then that's just like one example. But like I said, how bad is the mainstream media? How many times do they get caught out on their lies? And, it's funny because like somebody that's an independent journalist, right? The level of scrutiny an independent journalists will get subjected to, they say one thing wrong, their credibility is ruined forever. The mainstream news gets things wrong all the time. And like everybody just forgets, like, where are all the fact checkers for 7 News, 9 News? Where are the fact checkers for them? Now, recently, oh, thank God for this. I have seen so much public scrutiny to these mainstream media outlets because people can see through the garbage. People realize Dan Andrews is running around like a tyrant dictator. And people are starting to wake up to that. You go watch Dan Andrews' press conference when he stands up and speaks, and people are commenting all kinds of things at him these days because the people can see through it. But the mainstream media will call anybody that questions the Andrews government and his police state that he's created as a COVID denier. Now, I can look around and pretty clearly see that we live in a police state, but that doesn't make me a COVID denier, right? But that's the perspective the mainstream news wants to put on people. It wants to say that people like me who want to say the Andrews government's doing a crap job, and actually the destruction they're causing through all their measures is actually much more destruction than what we've seen from the virus in Australia thus far. That's actually a fact. I challenge anybody to question me on that. And basically the mainstream media frames it that that's a bad thing that we question the government because the government's doing everything it can to save lives, and that anybody who says otherwise is a COVID denier. Well, that's not a democracy, because in a democracy in Australia, we have what's called a representative and a responsible government. They're supposed to they're supposed to be representatives of the people, and they're supposed to be responsible. They're supposed to be held accountable. They're supposed to be open to scrutiny, which means that the public says, we don't like what you're doing, then they should be scrutinized so they can be held accountable. But then if you have the mainstream media just flipping this narrative of, well, no, these people are just COVID deniers and they need to shut up and listen because he's saving lives, where is the scrutiny in that? That is not democracy, people. Finn,
mate.
What have you got to say?
Well, I'm in Queensland, so we don't have that much COVID stuff going on up here. I think we had 3 cases last week, so we're pretty good up here. It's fucking crazy to hear you talk about it though. Like the police state, it's something out of a fucking novel or something, man. It doesn't seem real. It just seems so fucking.
Well, we do have our muzzles. We got these muzzles right here. It says, "Shut up and comply." That's what this says. Shut up and comply.
Having the drones fly around, that's some crazy shit. I hadn't heard of that before until you told me about it.
It was mainstream news. They were glorifying it. They were like, yes, this is so great. Bring in the police state. Bring in the mass surveillance. Yes, wonderful. Oh, by the way, we've also just started training the police with semi-automatic rifles because, an unarmed population needs to be policed by officers with semi-automatic weapons. Because that makes sense, because respiratory illness means semi-automatic weapons for police and unlimited powers. But look, I don't want to go too far down to the COVID rabbit hole here, because I think that what we're really trying to point out here is this is a serious risk to our democracy. And that's what I want to ask you, Finn. Like, what do you see when you think about what's going on with this code and the implications it has for journalism in Australia?
No, mate, I don't see it going anywhere. Like I said before, what I think is happening is that the legacy media is losing their grip on all knowledge. They used to have all knowledge. It used to be theirs and to deal out as they saw fit. If you wanted to know something, they were the custodians of it. They were the ones who issued it. And now what's happened is the internet has come along and opened that up to everyone. And at the beginning, they didn't give a shit. They didn't think anything of it. And no one really did. No one knew what the internet was going to become. We still don't. We still don't know where the fuck it's going. But then all of a sudden, the average person got the ability to start using the internet as they saw fit and started going and learning the things that they wanted to learn. They didn't have to be told something. They could go find it out for themselves. I was mentioning this to you before, just before we started recording, about the airways. So back in the day, if you wanted to get up, I don't know what the price is now, but it used to be a few years ago. If you wanted to get up your own radio station and you start broadcasting, you'd have to buy equipment, you'd have to get licenses, you'd have to go through the entire rigmarole to get it all set up. And the initial outlay you would need is about $15,000 before you could start broadcasting. Now, freedom of speech is still free. You can still go out and say whatever you want. But if you're not reaching anyone, then you don't really have speech. So what they did, well, my theory on it is, at least, take that with whatever the fuck you will, is that by putting all these limits on it and these legislations and these licenses that you have to go get before you can start broadcasting, that severely limited how many people could get out the actual information, except the legacy media companies. And they held it and they contained it for so fucking long. It was theirs. There was no one starting up that they didn't know about or have control over. So now everyone has access. Everyone can upload what they want to upload. And that is, I was reading on my channel, if you go watch one of the videos, I can't remember which one it was, I'll link it later. They're talking about the media complaining that they lost 40 to 50% of their viewers because of independent journalists like you or me. Not that I would call myself a journalist, because I've not been doing this fucking long, man. And I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, to be honest, but I'm picking it up along the way. And it seems that if I can take 40% or 50% of views away just by speaking knowledgeable and speaking in a way that's coherent to people and making sense in it, as opposed to what the legacy media is pushing, which is just garbage media these days. Like, man, it's fucking garbage. I don't know anyone.
You could see the agenda in everything.
It's so fucked up. I don't see anyone reading it anymore. Everyone's turned off from it because everyone knows it's shit, and they're going online. And I think what this is, it's obvious to me what it is. You know, these fucking legacy media people are just trying to grab it. They see that the internet is taking over. They see what magical place the fucking internet is, and they're trying to limit that. They're trying to take it down and stop it before it gets fully out of control, before they can't control it anymore. And I think this is their last ditch at it, because I think if this fails, which I hope it fucking does, again, Google's by no means the fucking pillar, man. They're not perfect, but compared to legacy media, holy shit, they're a completely different fucking animal.
Yeah.
So and sorry for the long rant there.
No, that's absolutely fine, because I've gone on my own few long rants, and you know, you had a lot to get out there, and you had quite a fair bit to add there. And I think, first of all, like, one of the things is it's this balance between, like, who do you trust more, like Google or the legacy media? And it's like,
neither.
Google already admits that they censor you. All right, at least Google are fairly transparent about it. Like, they're like, yeah, we shadow ban because we think that that's wrong. And it's
they denied it for a bit, but yeah,
they denied it. But they're like, all right. And they're like, okay, yeah, we already do give the mainstream media a free kick. Yeah, we already do give them, you know, free kicks, you know, that's worth whatever we think it's worth. I think they said, like, we already give them billions of dollars worth of free clicks, right, in their open letter. These are some of the things that Google have, like, you know, go out and spout. But the mainstream media, you want to give them that much power and control over the information that you consume. You want them to have that much. Why do they need that much? I think that's a genuine question to ask. And look, if I had to speculate, and look, pure speculation here, this is just fluffery. This is just speculation. So, you know, don't listen to me if you don't want to, but this is just my opinion. I think mainstream media realized that at some point, the people are smelling up and they're sniffing the roses. They can, these roses really smell like poo. Isn't that a song by Outkast? Right? And they're like, yeah. So I don't want to read mainstream media anymore. What's that? There's these YouTube content creators, and they actually present the news in like an actual factual, logical, and reasonable manner. I'm not referring to myself, by the way. I'm just saying that these are other outlets. And, you know, maybe there's other independent journalist sites, and they're actually reporting on the news better. So, like, for an example, I'm going to give Sky News a bit of praise here. Look, when it comes to mainstream news, like, I'm kind of just always iffy about all of it. I'll give Sky News one thing here, and that is, lately, they've actually been reporting more so on facts and logic and reason than any other media outlet, right? And, you know, that's something for them, you know, that's something for them to be sort of commended on. But, you know, the danger you have with a code like this is that you have the ACMA, that even, let's say you got your big Sky News, the ACMA, the media authority, they would have the ability to give Sky News the caboots in the algorithms. You know, they could make them no longer a party to the code. And then you've got your independent content creators that are they're reasonable, independent journalists, and then they're going to just get buried. And what I think essentially has happened is they're saying, all right, we're losing control of the people. They're going off to alternate media sources. They're gone. They don't want to listen to us anymore. We need to draw them back in. Well, they tried to draw us back in, but they can't, because people think it's BS. Like, go watch 7 News live stream Facebook when Dan Andrews gets up and speaks, right? Guess what? Everybody's kicking off. They're not having it, right? Go. Like, people are really starting to they smell the poo-poo. So the mainstream media, let's go, all right, what if we could, you know, tell the ACCC that Google's not bargaining was very fair? And I know, but here's the thing. The background to this, all right, that is speculation. The background to this is there was negotiations. There were negotiations between Google and the ACCC on this. They were trying to come to an agreement and they couldn't. And because they couldn't come to an agreement, we ended up with this. But I think somewhere along the lines, these companies with a lot of money were like, well, you know, I think it's not too far-fetched to say that companies with a lot of money can buy politicians and they can, you know, buy a bit of political power. And I wouldn't be surprised, like, you know, we scratch your back, you scratch ours. So we're going to pay you money to draft this legislation that's going to become mandatory code, that we're going to make Google, Facebook, Instagram, and all the social media platforms a party to, so that if they want to deal in Australia, they have to deal through this code. And then, because we're now getting favorable treatment and we're getting more money, we're getting all this data and, you know, all these nice and lovely things, and you helped make us the monopoly and knock out all of our competition, because their competition was knocking them out of the water. So they had to eliminate their
competition for a long time. I think the legacy media controlled both sides for a long, long time.
Yeah. So this is the first, the internet is the first time that mainstream media has actually seen competition. And basically what's happened is they're like, well, let's knock them out of the park. And now I wouldn't be surprised if these mainstream media outlets are going to be very favorable to our governments. I mean, like they already are. I was already telling you, like the mainstream media is like anybody who questions Dan Andrews, who is doing a horrible job. Anybody who questions that is a COVID denier. Anybody who has any genuine concern about the COVID vaccine, which I think there is a lot of genuine concern about, is an anti-vaxxer, right? That's how it's framed through the mainstream media. And yeah, I mean, one of the examples of the mainstream media recently was in Belgium. People kicked off. I think it was somewhere between 1 and 2 million people took the streets because they were fed up with their government, right? They had enough. They said enough is enough, right? Do you know how that got portrayed in the mainstream media over here? 10,000 far right-wing extremists, neo-Nazis took the streets to protest 5G coronavirus conspiracy theories. That's how it got portrayed in the media. It was actually Belgium saying enough is enough. We're sick of our government.
Yeah, you can't be calling people Nazis when they're not Nazis and have that work out for you. That's not going to pay off in the long run. You're taking away the importance of that word too. Like that word has a lot of fucking weight to it. And when you keep misusing it like that, when the real Nazis come along, you've ruined it. You've ruined the word. And now the real Nazis get away with a lot more shit than they should have got at the fucking beginning before you use that word.
They're getting away with it in Victoria right now.
Yeah. It's a fucking rough time, man. There's so much going on at once. Fuck, I'm glad we're not dealing with that much COVID up here because we can actually focus on this shit. You guys down there, you've got everything coming at you. There's so much fucking going on. I don't know how you're all staying sane down there.
Well,
having drones watch you too, that's a fucking new level, bro. I don't know what the fuck that is.
Like everybody that follows my personal social media thinks I've gone a little loopy. I haven't. To be honest, I'm as sane as I've ever been. I just happen to have a very good lens and a good eye to see what's going on because, oh man, I'm sorry. We were trying to keep this on topic, but I'm going to have to rant again. Somebody tell me, what does military on the streets, a curfew, and unlimited police powers have to do with stopping a virus? What does drones spying on people have to do with stopping a virus? Why are there planes flying into Melbourne Tullamarine all night, every night? What's that got to do with the virus? You know, the only place we've got flights coming into from Melbourne right now is China and the rest of Australia. So we're taking flights from other states in Australia and China. That's it at Melbourne Tullamarine. Why have we got so many planes flying from China? Somebody answer that question for me, please.
So there's no one coming in from the rest of the world. It's just China.
Well, we don't know what's coming in on those planes. We know that you can actually see that they do land in all the time. At first, they actually were hiding it off the flight logs, but I think people were kind of like, So now you can actually go check the flight logs and actually see that, yeah, these planes from China are landing in Melbourne. So that's just a little interesting side note. But look, to just get back onto this media stuff, right? It's just so vitally important. You can't have a democracy without media, without like independent journalists, without independent media. And going back to that submission that was put forward before, these independent media journalists were expressing their concerns. They're really, really worried because they're like, we're done. If this gets through, like we're done. We don't meet the criteria for the code. We need to try and amend the code. And even if they were made a party to the code, the companies with the most money are going to be able to negotiate the most favorable terms. They're going to have control over the algorithms. And something concerning is so this is in the EM. Fuck it. I'll go to the share screen again in a second. I'll get this up. So in the EM, it actually says that when it comes to, so what happens is when the algorithms change, so to say this in plain English, right? Yeah, let's say you have, I don't know how to say this in plain English, but let's say you got like 5 search results. And let's say you got your top 5. You got ABC, SBS, Sky News, 7 News, 9 News. Let's just use those as broad examples, right? If Sky News was to fall below 9 News, they need to be given 28 days notice that that's what's happening. But if it is in the if there is something of importance in the public interest, an urgent matter of public interest. All right, I finally got it on my screen now. So we're going to share. If an algorithm change relates to a matter of urgent public interest, no advance notice is required. But the reasonable digital platform corporation must ensure the news business corporation is notified within 48 hours of this change. What does that mean? That means if something is of urgent public interest, so you might say, something to do with COVID. There's been a new outbreak, right? If one media outlet wants to say something, but then the other media outlet says, I don't like what they're saying, but I'm a party to the code, I'm gonna tell Google, hey, knock that person back in the search results because we need to push our news source, the correct news source, to the top, and squash old independent journalist who's trying to get his squeaky little voice out there to the bottom of the search results, because we can't have people hearing what he's got to say because we have the correct news. We have the correct view. And there's just too much power there. It's just, what is going on?
It'll just be based on who has the most amount of money at the end of the day, which is going to be legacy media. There's another thing in there as well. I was reading out another one of my videos, which is talking about how Google is fearing that what's going to happen is once they learn the algorithms, they're just going to start spamming heaps of smaller companies. Now, we were reading out the criteria before of what you need to be to get on the list. And what is very, very possible is that these legacy medias will spawn heaps of smaller conglomerates that can spam out their media. So you have your search feed, you search for it on Google, and it comes back with all these results, and then it's got 100 results of all these different articles. However, because they've got all your data, all of those are generated when you search for it. And those articles don't fucking exist. And all those smaller companies, those 100 companies, 100 results that come back, they're all owned by that original company. And they was just spam them. So the entire response that you get back from Google will just be shit. It won't be anything. It'll just be ad bait, and it'll just be clickbait, just clicking on it to get the ad revenue. That's all media will become, is because they won't have a need to tell a story anymore. They'll have all of your data. So the story will become irrelevant because they can match the story, the made up story, to your emotions, which means you're not going to have real news anymore. News will be dead, and you'll just have clickbait on the best yellow pages ever invented. It's just going to be fucking ruined. The whole thing's going to be over.
So this is where it's important because, they are taking submissions, and what we want to hope to see now, the ACCC, they're supposed to be an independent body, right? That's standing up for Australian consumer interests, right? That's what they're there to do. They're supposed to promote fair competition. So the hope would be that before this bill, because it's currently an exposure draft, but before this bill goes anywhere near getting passed through Parliament, that it gets changed and amended, because we need to see more protections afforded to our independent journalists. We need to see more protections afforded to some small businesses. We need to see them being able to not just be a party to the code, but to make it so that they can't just be wiped out by the mainstream media. That's something we'd like, you probably want to see, because look, here's the thing. It's an exposure draft bill. It's going to get introduced into Parliament. Not many people are actually speaking up about it, which is very, very crazy thing to think about. Something with this much weight is just sliding under the rug. Nobody's talking about this, but the consequences could be huge. You lose in your ability to have freedom of access to the information that you want to see from the people that you want to see it from. So you want to see, before this goes anywhere through getting passed, that we have, a good amount of amendments. And, this is when we need to write our submissions. Do you want 7 News knowing what you search on Google at 11 p.m. at night?
Yeah. It's fucking ridiculous, man.
Do you want them to know all of that so then they can start targeting you? They're like, oh, so it's 11 o'clock. Let's throw him an article about this. Yeah. And then there's going to be ads on that page about this. So he's going to go and click on that ad, and we're going to make ad revenue, and he's going to buy this. And like you don't understand. When you're subjected to all these ads and all this marketing, it's controlling you because it's using your preferences and your desires to get you to buy shit that you don't need. So it's going to control you on that front. It's going to control the information you see. It's going to control everything. But this is what's so interesting, because we haven't found many commentators searching for it. You said you did a search. You saw my video pop up, 2 other commentators. And this is where it just gets really, really, really weird. You left a comment on my video, and I got the notification. The comment said, hey, I saw your video. can we get together and do a video about this and discuss it and its implications? And I could see what your comment said, and I could see the notification. I clicked on it, couldn't find the comment. I went to my video, comments are gone. And I had 2 comments there before, they were gone too. I went on my laptop, I tried to find the comments, gone. So I ended up finding you on Facebook to reach out to you so we could have this discussion. But where did that comment go?
Yeah, it disappeared.
Didn't something similar happen to you?
Yeah, so I have only started this channel recently, and I've probably posted or commented on about 2 other channels so far, the 2 other commentators that you just referenced. So I messaged them to kind of get some sort of collab going on as well. And one of the videos that I commented on, all of the comments just disappeared immediately. I talked to the host, had nothing to do with it. They claimed they didn't know. Also, on the first video I put up, I responded to a lady. I don't need to say her name here, but I responded to this lady. She had some concerns, and I thought I addressed them. All of the comments were removed. I did not remove them. As far as I'm aware, she did not remove them. They just vanished. And so now this has happened to me 3 times, just talking about this subject. So I don't know what's going on there. There may be something running in the background. Maybe I said something I shouldn't have said or something like that. I don't know why they've disappeared, but it is very strange that they have disappeared. I wasn't even aware of my one disappearing on yours until you told me about it. And as far as I'm aware, I did not share anything in there or say any words in there that are offensive, or there's nothing in there. There's no context in there.
I can literally, I can still see the notification on my phone, but I can't actually see the comment. So like, just for the sake of it, I'll read out what your comment says. Where is the notification verbatim? Brilliant work, guys. Any chance I could get you on my channel, Zac? Would be great to have a chat about this. Would be good if we could sit down before the 28th rolls around, which is an impending date. And it's funny because it's almost like as if for whatever reason, they don't want this being discussed. It's like this legislation, like I can't believe something that has so much weight and so much power that nobody's talking about it. And
it's very strange.
And where's the Australian content creators right now? Like, where are you? This has an impact on you.
Yeah.
Because this is going to create an environment where you're relying upon your subscribers. The only way you're ever going to be able to grow now is if people hit the share button, which also means if you are listening right now, you need to hit the share button, not just because I want more views and followers, not just because Finn needs more views and followers because we're new, but because the word needs to get out. We've only got a few days. This is urgent. The impact that this can have on our democracy, like I've outlined, when you're only getting one view, when there's a power for only one view to be jammed down your throat. And I tell you what, there's already a push for them to only ever give you one view. And what I'm seeing from people that are interacting with me is there's the right view and the wrong view. And the right view is that which is perpetrated through the mainstream media, and anything that contradicts their narrative at all is the wrong view.
Yeah.
And do you want to live in a world where you can't find the other information? Even if you see the right view and you think the right view just smells like a bunch of poo-poo and you want to go find out what the wrong view is, well, you have good luck finding it. And let's not forget, this is not limited to Google. Talk about Facebook, Facebook newsfeed, Facebook News, Instagram. This is beyond me.
Yeah. This is, we've never seen anything like this before. This is crazy. They're coming after, the thing that's going against the media. It's like we finally have an escape from it, and now they're trying to take it back. It's ridiculous. Just on the ways to stop it though, I just sent you a message in Zoom, so I don't know if you can copy and paste it into the Facebook feed or whatever, but it's a link to a petition. It's already got 38 or 37,500 signatures. So hopefully we can get it to like 50,000 or something like that. If we can both, just share it. I'll put it in my video as well. But fuck, man, it's so crazy to think that we're in this time, like the time where we're about to lose freedom of speech on the internet. It's literally here, a few fucking days away, and no one's fucking talking about it. I don't get it. I don't know if I'm searching the internet wrong. I don't know why I'm not getting it popping up on my feed. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know why we can't find it. I don't know why when I search for it, 4 fucking YouTubers come back, and me being one of them. What the fuck is that? I'm not a fucking YouTuber. I started this 2 weeks ago. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Why the fuck am I coming back as one of 4? It's ridiculous. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. I don't know what the fuck is happening.
And what an interesting time for them to pass some legislation that gives the mainstream news such powerful monopoly over the information that we're able to consume. What an interesting time for that to happen. What an interesting time for them to slip in something there that says if it's an urgent matter of public interest, you can tell Google to knock us up to the top of the search rank, bury those other news outlets, because this is an urgent matter of public interest, and we need to make sure only the right view gets out there and nothing else. Don't you dare try and contradict our narrative, because that's what we're heading to, guys. That's a bit of a scary place. And if this doesn't concern you, then I don't know what will.
Yeah, like this used to be a fucking conspiracy theory. This literally used to be a conspiracy theory. And now we have it literally written in fucking code, literally about to be passed on the 28th, like a few days away.
Not passed on the 28th. So the submissions are open until the 28th. Okay. So the submissions are open until the 28th. That's where people can have their say as to what they think should be done with the code. This is an exposure draft bill. So this hasn't necessarily seen the lights of Parliament yet. But what's going to happen is this will be debated in Parliament. But this is the moment where the public has an opportunity to have their say. After that, this is just going to be debated in Parliament. Now, I don't know if people are familiar with the parliamentary process. Let me give you a quick rundown. Legislation has to pass through two houses, the lower house and the upper house. And that's part of our system. And then as well as that, generally legislation will have anywhere from 2 to 3 readings. So usually a bill will be introduced into Parliament, and they'll see how many people agree to it, see if it can get passed. And then a lot of the politicians will then say, well, actually, before we let this go through, we'll have to make these amendments, right? So then they'll be like, okay, no, send it back for amendments. Now you get the second reading. So then it gets read into Parliament again. And then, maybe it gets through this time, but maybe somebody says, hang on, I'd like to see these amendments. And they toss it off for amendments. And then, so anywhere, most of the time legislation, 2 to 3 readings to get through Parliament. So I think we will see a lot more traction on this story in the coming weeks to months. Once the submission time has closed and they've finished with the exposure draft of this bill, then once they start reading this through Parliament, that's when we'll start to kick off. Because also when it comes to our federal Parliament, I don't know if you're familiar with Hansard, but everything gets discussed in Parliament is public information. For example, like these days they live stream federal Parliament when they sit. You might have seen that recently. So that's when I expect to see this pick up traction. And hopefully, I don't know how aware some of the politicians are of this exposure draft bill, because I haven't heard really any concern from any politicians on this at all. Once this gets
surprisingly quiet. Yeah, very quiet.
So maybe once this gets to Parliament, it'll kick off. But the problem is, once it gets to Parliament, it's too late for us to have a say. Yeah. You only have... It's 10:30 p.m. on the 25th of August. If you've got something to say about this bill, if you've got something to say about free speech, you've got something to say about free media, you have 2 days. You have 2 days. And if you're watching this after the 28th, well, that's it. It's up to the government now. So let's just hope that if they don't amend this before it goes to Parliament, that we have some good politicians there that are going to look at this and say, hey, this is not about fair trade and competition. All the other media outlets are going to get fucked by this, and we need to see some changes before we're going to pass this, because this is a gross infringement on our freedom of speech, because, they can't legislate against our free speech. What can they do? They can't legislate against our free speech. So what they're trying to do here is they're trying to limit the information that we can be exposed to.
Trying to control the speech. Yeah. And if there's any politicians out there listening to this, which I highly doubt, but if there is, please read that paperwork we read out at the beginning here from the 88 journalist conglomerates, because they are the low-end people. They are the local news journalists. They are the people who tell the real stories these days. So please read their response. It is very easy to understand. I've been reading these documents for a while now. They're fucking mind-numbing. They just fucking are mind-numbing. They're written by lawyers, and normal people can't understand that shit. I can't understand. I had to train myself to be able to fucking read this shit, and it's goddamn boring. But the stuff that these journalists responded to, it's bearable. You can get through it. You can tell the lawyer still did it, but it's much more easier to read. And it's coming from the local journalists, the local people it's going to impact the most out of everyone. So it might be worth reading that shit.
If anybody, look, so definitely read that, because I think that addresses a lot of the concerns. So I read through most of the legislation and most of the explanatory memorandum, and I also did that on a previous live stream, which you can also check out. The replay is on YouTube, and it's also on the Facebook page. It was only 5 days ago that I did the original live stream on this. But if you're ever going to try to read legislation such as this, I'll recommend the explanatory memorandum, which I'm going to link, as well as the legislation, because what the explanatory memorandum does, it says, this is the purpose of this legislation. The legislation does this, refer to section that. The legislation does this, refer to section that. Now, if you want to be a prudent lawyer, you go and actually read the sections as well, and you start to figure that out. But a lot of people don't fully understand that. And for the purpose of illustrations today, it was much easier to just read out parts of the explanatory memorandum, because, you know, it just gives you that sort of outset. So the links will be there. Read some of this stuff for yourself. Don't take what we say with a grain of salt. All right, just go read some of this yourself. See what kind of implications it's going to have. Have your say. Get your submission in before the 28th. There is not a lot of time. If you want to still see democracy in this country, because if we don't have a free media, there's no democracy. The freedom of press and the freedom of media and the freedom of speech are imperative to our democracy. Because if we can't have multiple sides of a story, if we can't have, if we can't have that discourse, if you're only ever getting one view, you basically just live in a dictatorship. And what? As far as I see anyways, like, broadly, somebody tell me broadly, like, Liberal Party, Labor Party, what does it matter? I think they're both useless. Our government in this country, look, like, we live in a free country with a lot of rights, although some of them are being stripped under the guise of COVID. And look, for you people in other states in Australia that haven't seen some of the lockdowns that we have in Melbourne, don't think that you're going to be completely immune to them. And as well as that, you should go look at some of the legislation that's being passed under the guise of COVID. Even while you guys still don't have any or many cases, your parliaments are still busy giving themselves and police powers ready for it. So, this is really, what a time to be alive. And what I want to just say here as well, because I think we're going to wrap up here, is sort of thin, man.
Yeah.
You're only 2 weeks in. Don't stop, all right?
Oh, yeah, man. I'll be covering this the whole way.
Well, not even just this. As you continue on, mate, because, you're only 2 weeks in. You had the balls to just get on a live stream, which, that's not insignificant, right? And you're covering something as topical as this, all right? It's something that a lot of people just let slip under the rug. So you've shown you've got independent journalism skills. You're articulate. You understand what you read, and you can talk about it. So what I want to do here is I want to encourage you to keep up with this stuff, and I want to encourage anybody that's watching from my Facebook page or from my YouTube channel on the live replay to go make sure they check out Finn's channel. Finn, you want to shout yourself out here?
Yeah, it's just Finn Bugden, Bugden, Fin as well, just one N. Go check that out. There's not too much on there at the moment. But yeah, I will be adding to this almost every day from now on. And, I'm honestly not trying to get the views right now. The only reason I'm putting these videos up is because I want to have a clear conscience when this is fucking over. Because when we lose our freedom of speech, there's a lot of people going to be saying, oh, I wish I did this. I wish I did that. I'm not going to be one of those people, because I did do something. And please, that petition, that's not even my petition. That's another YouTuber's petition. If I can get the fucking words out. Another YouTuber's petition, all right? Go sign it. It's going to make a difference. We've already got 38,000 people on that thing. That's incredible. Let's see if we can get this thing stopped, or at least release the grip that legacy media has, because what they are trying to get control of is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, man.
Yeah, precisely. All right, look, I think that's going to do it. I think I emptied the tank on that rant. This is some dangerous stuff. But did you have any? Is that you got all your final points out there, Finn? Is that all? I
think so. Yeah. If you want to hear more, just go check out the channel, Finn Bugden.
And if you tuned in, or if you're on the live, even if you're on the live replay, make sure you share, because this is important. This is more important than what you ever think it could be.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.